Welcome back to Reimagining Our Faith. Today we conclude our encounter with the parable of the Good Samaritan by considering the person that has the title role. And again, our 21st century ears do not hear the word Samaritan in the same way as that first audience would have heard it. Love is not the word to describe the relationship between Jewish people and Samaritans. Disdain and apathy are probably better words to describe their feelings toward one another. So for Jesus to include the Samaritan not only in this story, but to include him as the third actor and the hero of the story is shocking, to say the least. The expectation would have been for anyone else to step in and help this broken and beaten man, but no one was expecting a Samaritan to show up. But Jesus, fully leaning into this parable, into this riddle, subverts their expectation by naming their enemy as the one who is showing love. The Samaritan is the one who saw the man, stopped, and went toward him. He did not see an enemy. He did not see someone that his culture told him to despise. He did not see someone who probably felt little love for him. What the Samaritan saw was another human being who needed help and willingly provided that help because he was moved by compassion and empathy to lead with love. Jesus concludes the story by telling us that the Samaritan binds his wounds and then he refuses to leave him. Instead, he carries him on his own donkey to a public inn for safety. He pays for the man's stay and he promises the innkeeper to return to cover all of the man's bills. Now, this is no small financial feat, for the Samaritan is giving multiple days of his own wages to care for this stranger who is his neighbor. The Samaritan is modeling what it looks like to give extravagantly to someone else. He offers healing, he offers housing, he offers food, he offers transportation to this man in dire situation. He offers what he hopes would be offered to him if the situation was reversed. And I think that is the point of the story. We have focused so much on the three people in this story, the priest, the Levite, and the Samaritan who come across this broken and beaten man, that we forget there is a fourth person in the story. The man who was robbed and hit and left to die alone is also an actor. We like to focus on the Good Samaritan and perhaps ask how we can play that role today. And don't misunderstand me, we are called to be like the Samaritan and to be a neighbor to everyone we encounter. But I wonder if Jesus told this story to cause us to ask ourselves, when have we been the person in the ditch? When have we been left alone to struggle and to hope that we can help ourselves? When have we sat and watched our neighbors walk by and ignore us and leave us to figure out all of our problems on our own? I think Jesus wants us to see ourselves as the person in the ditch so that we know what it means to be truly helpless, to be unable to care for ourselves without a neighbor to intercede on our behalf. Jesus is calling us to empathy, to feel helpless, to bear the weight of those who every day are robbed, beaten, and left in ditches waiting for their own death. The more I encounter this story, the more I am convinced that Jesus is screaming at us, look, you are no different than the man in the ditch. You are quite often unable to help yourself. So why hold your neighbor in contempt for what you can't do either? This story, this riddle that Jesus is telling about our neighbor and about how we reconcile the question of who is our neighbor. The genius of what Jesus is doing here is that Jesus never defines a neighbor. He bypasses the very question he's been asked, and instead he reminds every hearer that we are at any time each of the people in this story, the priest, the Levite, the Samaritan, and the man in the ditch. All of them are neighbors to each other, just as all of us are neighbors to each other. Jesus, in his unique way, is clarifying that we will never not encounter a neighbor, and we will never not be a neighbor to someone else. And if the law tells us to love our neighbor as ourselves, then doesn't that mean we seek to love and to be loved as God loves us? As you continue to reimagine your faith this Lent, I encourage you to see your neighbors for who they are. See yourself as a neighbor, as you are a neighbor to them. And let empathy and love and grace be your guide. The empathy and love and grace that is offered freely to you by Jesus. And then do as Jesus instructs this religious scholar in the parable. Go and do likewise.